Welcome, everyone, to the 50/50 Women on Boards Austin Conversation on Board Diversity. I'm Laura Webb, honored to be hosting today's event along with two incredible co-chairs, Michelle Skelding and Wendy Howell. We are pleased to have this important conversation with all of you today as we discuss the theme, Leading the Way to Diverse and Gender-Balanced Boards. May this be a catalyst toward the next steps in your own personal journey as you aspire or for those who currently serve on a corporate board. 50/50 Women on Boards is an education and advocacy campaign committed to achieving gender balance on corporate boards. The global conversation began on November 3rd, which featured CEOs of companies with gender balanced boards or who have 3 or more women on their board. If you missed the kickoff recording, it's available for all registrants via your Event Mobi link. Austin is one of 30 conversations happening now across the country as well as around the world. Additionally, on November 19th at 11 a.m., you're invited to a first-time closing celebration for all registrants as we review the results of those 30 events, which of course is included in your ticket.
Thanks, Laura. Hey, everyone. We're so excited to begin. It's been a long journey to get here, but I first want to take a moment and thank everyone who's helped make this happen. As we all know, it takes a lot of time and commitment to create a meaningful event. So I sincerely want to thank everyone for being here today. First, I want to make a huge shout out to my co-chairs, Laura and Wendy, who share my passion and intention for the advancement of diversity on boards and building strong support networks for women. We know we can't do it without each other, so thank you. Next, I want to thank our outstanding leadership committee. They have been instrumental in increasing visibility for this event. And also we have the fortunate opportunity to meet some of the most amazing, powerful, and wonderful women in Austin. So thank you to our leadership committee. Last and not certainly least, we want to thank our global sponsors. Without the global sponsors, all of this couldn't happen. And then especially our local Austin sponsors. We have Content Stack, Bridgepoint Consulting, Winstead Attorneys, NFP, and the Executive Council Network. Thank you so much for your support of our inaugural year. And over to you, Wendy.
So sorry, I was still on mute. Thank you, Michelle. I did want to also call out the fact that on our leadership committee, we did have one male ally who joined us, Danny Cohen. So thank you to Danny as well. I do want to say, please be active on social. We want to spread the word more. So put your thoughts out on Twitter, LinkedIn, and use the hashtag 5050WOB. And also, we will be going into breakout rooms after the main session. We have an amazing group of leaders that's going to speak to you. And once we are done, you will go into your agenda on the left-hand side of your screen, and you'll click through to get to your breakout room. So thank you.
To kick off the discussion, I'm delighted to introduce you to Betsy Berkhammer-Creder, the CEO of 50/50 Women on Boards, the co-owner of retained executive search firm Berkhammer Clayton, and the author of 2 books, The Board Game: How Smart Women Become Corporate Board Directors, and Winning the Board Game. Betsy is going to share 50/50 Women on Boards research on the national and Texas statistics for the progress women have made on the Russell 3000 company boards.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so glad to be here. Hello, Austin. So glad to be here. And thank you for tuning in to hear more about how you can forge your way and pursue corporate boards, following the advice of our fantastic VIP panel you're going to hear shortly. And then you'll be going into breakout rooms to have one-on-one informal coaching with your volunteer corporate directors who are here to offer you personal counsel on how you can get yourself on corporate boards. So everything you're doing today, and if this is your first step into your journey to be on a corporate board, all this builds on your career. Think of this as your ultimate career goal. And that's whether you're mid-career, senior career, even already serving on other boards, but wanting to be on a corporate board. This is the pathway to go. And you're part of something big, really big, as you're about to hear. 6,000, I wanted to mention that of all the 30 events that we're putting on this month in our global conversation on board diversity, 6,000 registrants are with us and are with you as we're advancing our mission to achieve gender balance, 50% of the board seats being held by women in publicly held companies. So quarterly and annually, our organization 50/50 Women on Boards uses the data provided by our partner Equilar to analyze and release our gender diversity index key findings, where we cite the percentage of women on boards nationwide by state and by industry sector. We also report on the percentage of women selected as new board members added to boards. And based on those who self-identify, we report on the race and ethnicity of all directors. So let's look at the year-over-year progress nationally and in Texas. We are ecstatic to report the nationwide level of women on boards is higher than ever. We have reached, as of June 30th, 25.6%, which is the highest we've ever been women in history. So this effort to continually advocate as we do and publicize the issue and the business issue of the importance of getting women on boards is really, really working. And you'll see that's a 3-point increase from last year. The red bar is this year on the bottom bar, and the gray bar is last year. So 25.6% over 22.6 last year is a greater increase year over year than the previous 5 years. And this is nationwide out of the almost 30,000 board seats that are nationwide in publicly held Russell 3000 companies. So we're at the halfway mark, still a long way to go. We don't know how many years it'll take, but we're working on it. Hopefully only 5 or 6 or 7. All right, let's talk about Texas. Texas is working on it, but still improving. We are at 23% of all Russell 3000 board seats in Texas being held by women, and that's over 20% last year. So we are moving in the right direction, 3 percentage point increase over last year. And this is particularly important that the total number of directors, men and women in Texas, is 2,300, and the total number of women directors is 500 of the 2,300. So that's why we're almost at a quarter, but not quite there yet. So as you in the audience are pursuing and reaching corporate boards, you're going to help change these statistics. And nationwide, as our goal is to achieve gender balance. Gender balance means 50% women, 50% men on the corporate boards. And if an odd number of board seats is on that board, we call gender balance women holding one more or one less than half. We're really, really pleased. This is higher than ever, that nationwide 7% of all public companies on the Russell 3000 now have gender balance. And that's 215 companies out of the almost 3,000 companies nationwide. So that is a good goal. Now, we want to get to 100% of companies being gender balanced. That's probably going to take us a long time, but we're tracking that because, as you'll see on the next bar, 3 or more women on boards have the companies that have 3 or more women on boards have advanced to 34% of publicly held companies in the country, and that's a significant increase over last year, which was 26%. And you'll see on the bottom rung there that the number of companies with 0 women has definitely reduced from 7% last year to 4%. The message is working, and the business issue is being realized by companies. And let's talk about Texas on gender balanced. Well, the orange bar again is our Texas numbers and for 2021, and Texas numbers for 2020 is the gray bar. So we're at 5% in Texas. Of the 13 out of 267 companies are gender balanced. So that's making progress. And as you'll see, the number of companies with 3+ women is also advancing. Thank you to 27%. That's a huge move forward and very positive. And the last bar, the number of companies with no women is reduced in Texas to only 66% from 13% last year. That's a really significant number. So congratulations, Texas. Keep moving in the right direction. It's going to take from 500 to 1,000 women holding board seats in Texas to achieve gender balance. The lower number is if women replace a man, and the higher number is if a woman is added to the board. So this is achievable, and all of you in this audience are on that pathway to be among these numbers. It's going to fall somewhere in that range when companies are ultimately gender balanced. And lastly, the women needed for Austin and San Antonio companies to be gender balanced are really achievable, from 90 to 161. So Austin women, you have your job cut out in front of you. Next. Only 12% of all directors are people of color, and we are working to improve this number. Our goal is also that 20% of all board seats will be held by women of color, and we have a long way to go. As you can see, we only can track the racial and ethnic backgrounds of women and men who self-identify, and that's very important for Equilar to be able to track. And we encourage all directors to self-identify their racial background. Next slide. This is to show you dramatically nationwide the low numbers of people of color on corporate boards broken down by their ethnic background. Now, the gray bar is the total number of people who don't self-identify as to what their racial background is. But as more and more people do self-identify, we hope these numbers will increase, especially as boards put on more men and women of color. And we encourage corporate directors to fill out their board profile. And those of you who aspire to be on corporate boards, fill out your board profile on Equilar's Board Edge profile, which is in the chat, and you'll be able to do that and self-identify your racial background so that you can easily be tracked. I think that's the end of my slides here. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Michelle and let me say good luck to all of you and absorb everything you hear today. I hope that this day changes your lives and your career direction.
Oh my gosh, Betsy, thank you so much. You are so inspirational, and thank you for the work that you do, all of the advocacy, all the research, all the statistics, so we know where we are and where we need to be. It's very encouraging and very exciting, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, everyone, fantastic to see the stats, and now we're so ready to have these incredible speakers on our panel. We're very lucky to have 4 not only incredible speakers, but also corporate board directors. We have Adam Stanley, Emily Rollins, Matt Flake, and Veronica Hinojosa Seguera. Yay, I'm so excited. Okay, so let me first, I'm gonna do it this way. I'm just gonna let them take it away. I'm gonna introduce Adam Stanley. He's the former Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer of Cushman Wakefield. He also serves on the board of GTX Corporation, and he will serve as our esteemed moderator. So please take it away, Adam, and thanks again to all the panel, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Wow, I'm so excited, not just to be the moderator, but the esteemed moderator. Really, really fun. This is an amazing panel discussion, and it's so important. And I'm really happy to be a part of it. Our theme is leading the way to diverse and gender balanced boards. Betsy shared tremendous stats that are both shocking and yet still hopeful. A lot of these 3 amazing people sharing the space with me this morning. So very excited. I have a visionary CEO, a world-class CFO, an incredibly accomplished advisory consulting partner. But I think more important to me is if you look at the screen, you see we have a very diverse panel with individuals from different backgrounds, different perspectives. This is what corporate boards need to look like. I'm not going to go through their full bios, but I do hope that each of you reach out to them on LinkedIn. They're incredible, and reach out to Matt differently, because I don't believe Matt's on LinkedIn. But each individual, as they answer their questions, I will ask them to share a little bit about their background, their bio, the board that they serve on, and that will be really relevant to the conversation. So as Michelle said, I'm Adam Stanley. I recently retired from my role as CIO and Chief Digital Officer of Cushman Wakefield. I'm on the board of GATX Corporation. I am a proud new resident of Austin, and I'm honored to welcome Matt Flake, Veronica Hinojosa Seguera, and Emily Rollins. So let's get started. I want to start with kind of a bit of scene setting. So there's an old adage that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And certainly today's boards, to a large extent, were kind of formed through relationships. And some board members may support a candidate who they know instead of looking outside their immediate network, or maybe even more than their immediate network. So I want to start with you, Matt. And I just want to ask the simple but really important question. Why is it important for boards to think differently today? Seeking out the best candidates, why is today's topic so important?
Yeah, thanks, Adam, and thanks for having me today. As Betsy said, I'm a male ally as well in all of this, so I like that line. So Matt Flake, I'm the CEO and president of Q2. I'm also on the board of Q2. I'm on the board of Dell Children's Hospital, and then I'm also on the board of a privately held company by the name of AffiniPay, which is an amazing company that was started by a woman, Amy Porter, one of the most impressive entrepreneurs in Austin. So your question, the one thing I'd clarify on your question, it's not today. It's always been a good idea to have a diverse board. It's just today, because of social pressures, fortunately, that have pushed people to begin to realize it's way past time for us to have diverse boards and diverse representation. But when I look at it, there's really 2 elements. Bringing people with diverse backgrounds that have seen the world in different ways from different perspectives makes you a better board, because you have perspectives that are different than your own. And so that's extremely valuable to have that person in the room with you when you're planning it. The other thing that I think a lot of people may not think about is, if you think about your employees and your culture of your company, it's very important that the leadership, whether it's the board or the executive leadership team, represent them, whether it's through gender or diversity, or whatever those might be. So you have to have equal representation, and then people can aspire to be in those roles or connect with those people, because we all see the world differently. But when you come in a room together with diverse people, I think you come up with better ideas, better solutions, and you're more empathetic to everybody in the room, rather than 8 white guys making a decision how minorities and women should work and live their life.
Veronica, I kind of see an absolute recognition there. Would love your thoughts on the same question.
Thank you, Adam, and good morning, everyone. I'm Veronica Hinojosa Segura. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor and Controller for the University of Texas System in Austin, and I serve on a private corporate board, Healthcare Service Corp, and I'm fortunate enough that I get to sit on a very diverse board. So this is all I've known. This is my first board assignment, but kind of tagging on to what Matt said, I really think that the last 2 years, people have found their voices and people have come alive. They now feel empowered to share their creativity, their opinions. And when you bundle all that up, it just makes for a stronger, much more synergy. And if you can bring that to the board table, it's a really win-win for the company, the shareholders, stakeholders, and also a good representation for the employees that company represents.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Veronica. It's amazing. My personal experience, both on the corporate side facing off to boards, but also as a board member, it's very different when you have a diverse perspective in the room. Conversations are different, they're stronger, it's more robust, and it's not just the gender diversity, but it's also different perspectives from different industries and different backgrounds. So I think the most important thing for this conversation is it's not just an imperative because people say it's an imperative, but it's really helping companies be better companies.
Mm-hmm.
Emily, I wanted to shift a little bit and go into really talking specifically about our goal and the goal of 50-50 women on boards. And listening to Betsy and reading some of their research, women are still a relatively small percentage of the company board seats. Significant progress for sure, but as women held less than 23% of company board seats on the Russell 3000. They currently only hold 30, which is 6% of CEO positions at S&P 500 companies. So clearly we can't recruit exclusively from the ranks of CEOs. And so there have to be strategies for identifying people from all over the world who may not be as connected to board members. I wanted to talk. Emily, how can we help women in business become better networked and more visible in their careers so that they're considered for these board openings, so we can close the gap in Austin as a starting point?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So just a brief introduction, and I'll respond to the question. Emily Rollins, I'm a retired audit partner from Deloitte. I spent about 30 years in public accounting and have been on the other side of the boardroom, which is presenting to boards and audit committees for decades now, and being maybe the only woman in the meeting, and I'm the service provider. So definitely have seen that side of these boards, and knowing that there was such a disparity in regards to representation, both in gender and diversity. So during my career, I actually helped women and diverse professionals get ready for board service. I put together 2 different programs through Deloitte that focus specifically on women executives up in Seattle and here in Austin, so that they can actually see themselves in those roles and understand all of the components to it. I do think that currently, because there's such an initiative in California, and also, the new rule in NASDAQ, or the SEC allowing NASDAQ to have the rule to show their board representation, there is more focus on getting women and diverse professionals on boards. The nice thing about that, and this is kind of goes back to your question, is the more that there are on the boards, the more people who are rising up in the ranks in their profession are starting to see that as something they want to do, either as an executive or close to retirement or during retirement as well. So I think the momentum and the ball is rolling. I think that more and more boards are looking for those professionals that are ready for board service, especially if you're a woman or a diverse background. And then each executive who's working at a company can help identify those people that might want to aspire towards that. As Matt mentioned, if his board is reflective of diversity, then his people and at Q2 will start thinking that might be a place that they can aspire to. So I think the ball is definitely rolling. There's great programs such as 50-50 Women on Boards, the coupled with NACD and different organizations that are starting to really emphasize that diversity on the boards.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, Emily, and I think it's interesting what you said and tying it to a little thing that Matt did earlier when he answered the question. It was interesting, talking about a founder who happened to be a woman, and saying one of the best entrepreneurs, not the best women entrepreneurs or the best diverse entrepreneurs, but truly the most, one of the best entrepreneurs. And I think that's super, super important. And that's what's amazing. I think one of the things that I've seen is when you force people to look out of their networks for talent, they're often surprised at how amazing the people are that they find. And you find this amazing new talent. And you're like, wow, how did I not know Emily Rollins before 2021? Like, how did I not know someone that amazing with that much experience? And I think it's a great thing. So it's really amazing. I wanted to talk about that. I think it's really key when we're using the language and talking about adding diversity to boards and expanding the network. We're clear that yes, many candidates are found based on the network, but as Emily talked through, boards are seeking candidates that have a certain type of experience, and it's a value add. So I'd like to do this, and we're going to actually ask the three of you to talk through some of the types of experience that your board or your industry are seeking today, to open up the conversation around what should we be focusing on. So what are some of those experiences that boards in your industry are seeking? Why don't we start with Veronica this time?
Thanks, Adam. So as I mentioned, I recently joined my first board in February of this year. It's about the only thing positive out of the pandemic year is that I had nowhere to go. So I spent time looking for board opportunities. But one of the things that the reason that I was discovered is because in particular, this board was looking for someone with an accounting and finance background. And specifically, they wanted to add someone to the audit committee. So fast forward, I'm now part of the audit committee on this board, but I also serve on the NomGov. And so one of the things that is consistent quarterly when we do meet is our chairman is very purposeful. The slate of candidates that we bring, he's looking for two things. Accounting and finance is always, if you can read a P&L, you're in. And then the other thing is an HR background, and specifically executive recruiting, executive comp structures, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course. But, so those are the two that come to mind. But regardless, everyone has a strong skill set. So keep your bios polished, your resumes polished, because you never know when someone will find you.
Matt, can you talk about that? And I'd love to hear you also touch on Veronica's point about the CV, because I think that's important for us to make sure everyone thinks through the difference between kind of how you sell your experience to a board versus how you might sell your experience to another company.
Yeah, Adam, it's interesting because you were talking earlier about a CEO as a board member. I would actually argue that CEO has nothing to do with whether you're a good board member or not. And so whatever, to anybody in the audience, whatever field you're in, it's about expanding, growing, getting better, and be able to add value to whatever company you sit on the board of. A great example of that would be the most recent board member we added, which is a woman by the name of Lynn Tyson. She was with Dell and ran investor relations. She then went to Pepsi and ran investor relations, and now she's at Ford running investor relations. None of those have anything to do with digital banking, fintech, the space we're in. But what she was able to see is she went through 3 major transformations. Dell and the shift to cloud-based technology, Pepsi and the move from soft drinks to more healthy drinks, and then Ford, obviously, with the EV revolution that's going on. And so you apply her experience with communicating that to public investors. And we need that because digital transformation is happening in our space right now. And so she has added so much value, but she's never been a CEO. She's not a finance and accounting person. And so there's all of these roles that we look for in people where you add breadth and depth to our team and our company and how we think about the things we should be thinking about, how we strategize, and what are the things we may be missing. And so her coming from outside of the industry is one of the things I would encourage everybody to think about. Is don't limit yourself to, if you are in banking, to just think about being on the board of a bank. You may be able to help somebody in a different field that's looking at getting into that. So, you're like you pointed out, I don't have a LinkedIn profile, and I don't, but maybe one of these days I will. But it's really about the value that you as a professional, what have you learned, and how do you take all the things you've learned, like Veronica's experience is accounting and finance, and those are very helpful. Every board has to have one of those, but every board has to have somebody who understands marketing, strategy, technology, information security, all those different things. And so how do you don't try to change who you are, just get better and grow your experience and make sure you're out there communicating and networking with people.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to your point about the not having to come from a particular industry. 2 things that I would add. The first is I'm on the board of a rail car leasing company, which if you've ever been stopped by a train, you've probably seen the GATX logo on a freight car or an oil car or a tanker or something. But I knew nothing about the industry, and really the reason I was added to the board was because of my digital experience and understanding digital transformation and understanding cybersecurity and kind of technology more broadly. But I think what's been fascinating is that since I joined, the first year, I think I was very much honed in on, okay, let's talk about, whenever they talk about technology, I'm ready. And then you start to get so much more comfortable and you realize that actually all of those muscles that you've been building for your entire career, whether it's the intellectual curiosity or the ability to ask it questions or to problem solve or to manage P&Ls, all of those things start to rush back. And so you really can contribute. So I love, that point, Matt, of really thinking much more broadly around how your experience can actually focus and better prepare you for supporting boards. So the one of the other things that I wanted to talk to, just to pivot a bit and dig a little deeper down into women, and in particular, because we have such a great panel with really interesting stories, women of color are still really lacking on boards, and the numbers that Betsy shared earlier today just reinforce that. People of color in general are less than 12%, and earlier when I looked through the Women on Board study, it actually is probably overstated. That 12% number is actually probably a little overstated because some people are on multiple boards, and so there's this possibility that number is lower. So Emily, I'd love to start with you, and just what do you think we need to do differently to ensure we are intentionally looking for racially and ethnically diverse board candidates with the expertise, with the skills to get them on board, especially given the challenges in the pipeline itself within corporate America in particular? How do we get people to advance in this pipeline?
Yeah, I think that's really a great segue in regards to just the root, maybe starting with the root, right? Which is getting a pipeline. And I think more and more women are rising in the ranks here in corporate America. There's been an initiative for about 30 years to get women up into the ranks in corporate America. So I think that's a positive thing. I think that in terms of the ethnicity or ethnicity aspect of it, I think that has become something important to corporate America in regards to ESG and social, and making sure that there is representation both at their their ranks in their companies as well as their customers are starting to become more diverse. So there already is some momentum in that area. But in terms of the pipeline, I do think that there's different backgrounds that can be on the board, and it's no longer just a CEO like Matt mentioned. It's someone who is in cyber, in digital design, in talent and people, diversity, learning is huge now in regards to just having some understanding of developing people and leadership. So those types of areas, and Veronica kind of touched on it as well, is a good background too. So no longer just saying, okay, well, I have to be a CEO to be on a board. I can actually have these skill sets to be on those boards. In terms of intentionality of the board, I think a lot of CEOs are having to step back and say, oh my goodness, that's right, my board is all look like me, or look like one thing. And so they start talking about it at the NomGov committee. Whoever is the NomGov committee chair needs to be very strong in regards to the resolve. If the CEO and the company believes that diversity is important, then the chairman of the NomGov committee needs to be able to say, yes, we're going to hold ourselves accountable to this, even if people start to say, well, this person's ideal because of their bio, but not because of their of who they bring to the board. So I really love that you're on that NomGov committee, Veronica, because I think even though we get brought onto boards, maybe as finance and accounting professionals, to be in the audit committee, to be able to expand to NomGov committee is actually a really good thing. And as we grow in those ranks, then people can be a lot more intentional. There's quite a few organizations now that are really focused on all of this. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to advertise all of them, but definitely the ones that probably are safe are, Ascend and NABA and Alpha. They definitely are looking at the fact that their organizations have some great candidates, not just in accounting, but in sales and marketing and development. So just being able to say there are a diversity in regards to the experiences too that they need on the board.
It's a quick show of hands. Who's on the NomGov committee?
Yeah, I'm just getting onto my boards, and I'm in charge of the audit committee, so I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not on the NomGov. But Matt, are you involved in your? Obviously, you help to direct yours, right?
Yeah, I'm not able to be on any committees on the Q2 publicly traded board, and then FinPay, we don't really have committees at this stage of the board, and then Dell Children's, there's no NomGov. But
Right.
I do think that one of the things that happens when you bring in more diversity is you start recruiting more diversity, and so it's a thing that grows and it grows. It's a flywheel, and then you begin to have more connections. And so I don't think it's any coincidence that we went from one woman on the board in 17 or 18 to now we have 3. And I'd like to hope that in the next, as you get through these board cycles in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be at 50%. We're about 37% now. We'll be at 50% in the next 2 years, and maybe even more. Why stop at 50%? If you get the right person, it can be 60, 70, 80%, 100%. It's to me that those numbers are, you have those metrics, and then also there's no reason to stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. One of the things that I would point out, Brian Kinney, the CEO of GATX, did something incredible that eventually led to me being on his board, which is when the recruiters came to him, they kind of, and he was intentionally trying to look for a diverse candidate. They gave him what he called the list, the same names he had seen over and over and over again. And he asked them to go back to the well and to intentionally look for, for something different. So I think there's those little things that you can do on the board, wherever you are on the board, really makes such a huge difference, to change the nature of them. Veronica, I really want to get your thoughts on this, because you had a really interesting story focused around LinkedIn and the path for early to mid-career women. So what feedback do you have for women based on your experience? And can you share that story with the community today?
I will. Thanks, Adam. So, I could spend the next hour talking about this because, specifically, I was one of those women who could be stuck in a mid-level position. And it really took a very influential VP during my time at Dell. And it wasn't Lynn. I sat next to Lynn at Lynn Tyson. But this VP could see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. I lacked a little bit of confidence. And honestly, I was still holding on to my cultural upbringing in that I watched my dad work for the same company for 35 years, put his head down, and then people would come and promote him. And so I was waiting for that person that was going to notice my hard work and was going to take me up the ranks. And the VP called me aside and had a crucial conversation with me and said, it doesn't work that way, so really explained to me, what that he believed in me, and I needed to believe in myself as well. And so he kind of empowered me, to come out of my shell and start telling my story. And so I do similar things with the people that I meet. I make sure that I understand their story. But getting back to that LinkedIn, part of what it taught me, that this VP taught me, and then, as I mentioned, the last 2 years have taught me, is that you really have to learn to toot your own horn without blowing it. And there is a book about that, and you must look it up and read it. It's a short read. But for me specifically, I was doing all the right things. I met with Emily a couple of times. As she mentioned, she did her, share of helping other women, and I'm very grateful for the work that Emily did. And so I felt like I was going through checking all the boxes, polishing my resume, and what have you. Talking about being intentional, Adam. So the CEO of the company that I serve on now specifically gave the non-gov committee some marching orders, and he was looking for a Latina from Texas with strong accounting background. And do you know that I had enough courage to finally say, how did you find me? Who told you my story? And at the end of the day, it was his EA did a search on LinkedIn and highlighted at the very top where, I don't think it said I'm from Texas, but it highlighted, my strengths. And so honestly, that's how I was selected for the board. And quickly, the reason that I have this position now as the controller for UT System is they too found me on LinkedIn. So when I talk about polishing your resume, polishing your bios, any new thing that you have accomplished, you need to quickly put that on LinkedIn, because you just never know.
Yeah, I love that. And the well, first of all, I'm super excited, and I will toot Emily's horn as well, because I think the first time I met Emily was at a cocktail party here in Austin, and I saw that energy from the very first. And the most important, I think this is important for all of us that are on boards. It's this, it's hard to get there, and once you get there, you almost have to do what you can to help other people. And from the first time I met, it was kind of the who can I introduce you to, and where can we connect, and kind of raise everyone up. Emily, you did something that I thought was interesting in social media, and I can't remember whether it was on Twitter or LinkedIn, but I imagine it really would help with folks like Veronica 15 years ago, where you changed your tagline.
Yeah.
Can you share that, if you don't mind, with the group?
Yeah, so an organization I've been involved with for over a decade is called Ascend Leadership, and it's an AAPI organization for professionals. One of the things that they've wanted to emphasize lately is the fact that there's another side to us as AAPIs other than the hardworking, heads down, mathematical geniuses that we all are. I laugh because I'm not a mathematical genius, but there was a side about kind of talking about our stories, like Veronica said, and what it took to get to even the leadership or the mid-level positions that we're currently in. Just to talk about the resilience that it takes to be identified to even get promoted. And also some of the biases that are the headwinds against what we need to face every day or every, year when it comes to different aspects of our career, whether it be client facing or if you're managing people, there's headwinds based on your ethnicity, at least, as what we were trying to emphasize in LinkedIn. So it was a LinkedIn campaign called The Other Side, and I shared my story. It's a little vulnerable because I also benefited very much from the intentionality of Deloitte going through programs of, helping women get ready for manager and promotion to partner, as well as, the other organizations. But I thought the point was primarily about the bias that's still very prevalent in corporate America, and not about the fact that, yes, I definitely got advantages that because I was at Deloitte,
Yeah, people notice. It's interesting. We sometimes forget our impact, and I think, to use Veronica's terms, you were talking about tooting your horn. What is you tooting your horn without blowing it? I think.
Not blowing it.
I actually mentioned that yesterday in a different panel too, Veronica. It's a great little
It
read.
is. It is. Everyone must read that.
I think that's awesome. So hopefully we can post that in the chat at some point. I think it's but that is, and for me as an African American male, growing up, I was told, like, pride cometh before the fall, and I always confused confidence with cockiness.
Yeah.
And it took me years to realize that you're right. You do need to figure out that balance to toot your own horn when necessary, but not not blowing it. So I think that's fascinating. Matt, I'd love to hear your perspective when you're talking about this and you're thinking about, you use the term a male ally. It's interesting, but you're in a very, very senior position, influential position. Would love to hear what you are doing and what you think you could do and people like you could do to advance this goal and to really find and develop more women to be on boards.
Yeah, I shared this story with everybody in the pre-program at one point about how when we went public in 2014, you go on an IPO roadshow and you go talk to investors all over the country, and you get prepared by answering every possible question you can imagine. And in my first investor meeting, I was with my CFO, Jennifer Harris, at the time. We finished at the very end of the meeting, the last question that the investor asked me was, "Why don't you have a woman on your board?" And I'm like, I'm prepared for every question. That one never even came across my mind. I was like, and I babbled out something stupid, which wasn't a good answer, to find one or whatever the excuse was. But for me, it was a moment of, I was raised by a single working mom. There was no gender identity in roles. I ironed clothes. I made my own food. I did my laundry. And she was super, my mother is just to the left of if Gandhi and Oprah had a baby. And she was super progressive as far as women's rights and everything else. But the eye opener for me was, if I was raised that way, and in 2014, a woman had been my boss most of my life. If I'm not doing that, what are the people that weren't raised that way, or maybe on the stereotype of the other side, from what Veronica was talking about, where this is a men's world or whatever it is. And so it was an eye opener for me. And from that point forward, I really began to work on with my partner in HR, Kim Rutledge, who, and before her even, work on what are we going to do to change it. And it really starts with measurement. If you think about how Betsy started this, it was measurement. Because things that you measure either get better or you get rid of them. And so for me, it's about, we looked at pay equality. We looked at leveling where women and minorities are. We have that measured for every single manager now. We also look at the ethnic hiring and then the gender hiring of people. Every manager can see what they do. We also check with, when we're hiring people, how many women did you talk to? How many minorities did you talk to? And then you begin to hold people accountable to that, because those things that are measured are going to get better or go away. And then with recruiting firms, your point on, I haven't never heard it before, but that list, that you're exactly right. There's a list that gets passed around, and you've got to do a better job. You got to be committed to go finding people. Lynn wasn't on the list. We worked through my CFO, current CFO, knew her through another, through Dell. And so you've got to be proactive. You just got to be committed to doing it. And so I'm embarrassed how long it took me to get to the numbers I'm at, but I'm also embarrassed that I'm one of the only publicly traded companies in Austin with 3 women on the board. So that's an obligation we all have. I told the women before this, I said, we need to have a men's meeting here, because they're the ones that need to hear this and do this. You all know that you need to be on board. So for me, it's just a matter of measuring it, putting in place not only programs for board members, but leadership, hiring technical women. We work with Black Girls Code here in Austin. So how do we go help the whole ecosystem get better and get more diverse?
Matt, I am absolutely going to use that. I think the best compliment you can ever give any human being, if Gandhi and Oprah had a baby, that is awesome. And I love that. And it's funny because it is totally true. I mean, the person that I admire more than anyone else in the world is, in fact, my mother. And it's not just because she was nurturing and she was caring, but because she was smart and she ran the business and she worked and she balanced all these things. And all of that skill set and that brilliance and everything, like, it's shocking that we're not at 50-50 or we're not more balanced, because we're absolutely missing out on talent if we don't get to that point. So even if it took you longer than you expected, thankful to you and to Austin that you're here now. And I think it's a great start. We're just going to continue to keep going. So whenever we have these panels, I think we have lots of conversations, great conversations. Loved you guys before, love you even more now. For everyone on the group, I want to make sure that everyone walks away with that one thing that you want to make sure that they walk away with. So thinking through whether it's advice for the women listening in that want to be on board, to the executives that are listening in that are on board, that need to do something different. Just going to ask each of the panelists to share that. What one thing would you want to ensure everyone listening today takes away from this conversation? And I will start at the top of my screen. I'll start with Emily.
Yeah, I would say is just show your resilience in your bio, in your LinkedIn, and anything. Just everybody has a story. Every single person does, and I think finding that unique story about yourself and owning it will be very positive in anything you do. And also kind of reach as you climb, or help people. That's always been my happy place, is when I can make great connections for folks, because I've been fortunate to have networking as one of my main parts of my career. And I love connecting people with opportunities.
Awesome. Matt?
I like what Emily said around have your story, and your story should grow every day by you growing and learning and be more curious, and then make sure you're out telling that story to people in a crisp, articulate way. And then I think Veronica said something too, which is she didn't have the confidence or didn't believe she could. Well, all of you can. It's just a matter of building the skill set and getting out there and telling the story.
I agree with that, Matt. I mean, it's just everyone has talents, everyone has skills, and you really just need to hold on to what you believe in yourself, and share that story with circles. And if you're lucky enough to be around Emily, and I certainly make myself available to all of you. If you have a story to tell and you need someone to help you shape that story, count on me, because you know what? So many people open doors for me that I have to pay it forward. I'm not keeping this to myself. There's plenty to go around. and I want to help you reach whatever goals that you might have. So
It's awesome. I would add for me, the advice that I would have for everyone on the phone who is an ally, and even for women on the phone, women of color on the call, if you walk into a room, whether it's a meeting room or a cocktail event or any type of experience, and everyone in the room looks exactly like you, then think about what that means and think about whether it's something you might be able to do to change that. Because I guarantee you, your life experience will be so much more amazing if you take the time and you intentionally and connect with difference and with diversity. And it's outcomes are better, but also it just makes life fun. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to our organizers. Thank you so much, Emily, Matt, Veronica. Really learned so much from you. Can't wait to interact with you as this pandemic winds down and we're getting back to cocktails and coffee. Hopefully we can all connect, and I will pass it back to our organizers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Wow, thank you. What an absolutely amazing discussion that was. So many insights, so many pearls of wisdom from a group of really esteemed leaders. So we thank all of you. There was a lot of key takeaways, so no shortage there. I think what really struck me is actually when Betsy was going through the numbers, 500 to 1,000 women we need in the state of Texas to be ready to join a board just to get us to gender balance. So plenty of opportunity out there. And as you've heard, know your story and always be ready. So I think those are a couple of mine. And then Michelle, what about you? Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love the data. I think all the opportunities there. So I'm so grateful. Listen, in the spirit of Austin, like having us showcase that collectivity and vulnerability that each of the panelists shared, which is we're all sort of 1 degree of separation away. They were vulnerable in their journeys along the way. So I was inspired. I literally was smiling ear to ear, just tickled pink about the heart and the compassion of our leadership here. And so what I did love well, don't change who we are. I think that Matt pointed out, which I love to hear, leverage your own set of experiences and just be who you are. And then what was it, to toot your horn without blowing it? That's so perfect. So I'm so tickled pink and so grateful to everyone.
What about you, Laura? What are your thoughts?
Well, I thank everyone today on the panel. This has just been an outstanding conversation and definitely necessary for the future growth of more women in diverse boards within the Austin community. But I did want to also share my personal background and experience includes a finance background coupled with professional services and working in tech companies. And discussion and countless meetings over the years with CEOs and executives have always included impact to the company's bottom line from a financial perspective. However, today, conversation has completely changed, and board diversity is absolutely critical to protect the shareholders and stakeholders' bottom line so that we can continue to influence change within those companies. So I am just so grateful to be here today, and thanks again for participating.
Well said. Again, I think there's probably 1,000 more takeaways that people have jotted down. So Adam, Emily, Matt, Veronica, thank you so much. We could not thank you enough for helping us advance this cause and have this important discussion. I want to give a very heartfelt thank to our sponsors, once again, our global sponsors. And because we're in Austin, a special shout out to our local ATX sponsors, Content Stack, Bridgepoint Consulting, Winstead, NFP, and my own organization, Executive Council Network. Thank you for your support in our inaugural year. We couldn't have done it without all of you sponsors. And then, last and certainly not least, I want to thank all of the participants for helping us drive this important conversation, not only in Austin, but really around the globe, as you've heard. We look forward to continuing this. If you are a mid to senior level person and you're looking to get on a board, you've heard so many pieces of wisdom to help you get there, but guess what else can help you get there? Sign up for one of the programs that 50/50 Women on Boards is hosting. There's 2 left in December. One is the Path to the Boardroom, and one is Get on Board Workshop. So go to the website 5050wob.com and you can sign up there. So we will now be transitioning to our breakout rooms. Just want to thank you once again. Very easy to get into your breakout room. Left side of your screen, click agenda. When you get in there, you'll have a breakout room option. You join, click join now to get there. If you happen to have any problems, just email events at 50/50 Women on Boards. The email is located in the description of this session. And also take full advantage. You are going to be in your breakout rooms with absolutely amazing leaders, not just our speakers, but other coaches. So take advantage, enjoy, and please plan to join us next year as well. Thank you.